It's no great secret that climbing gear is expensive, and sometimes it can feel like you're just throwing money off a cliff. Bro! And whether you're looking for gear online or at a gear shop, it feels as though there's 50 varieties and 17 different brands to choose from. So in this video, we're gonna help you cut through the clutter and figure out what you actually need to send to your next project. Climbing season is in full swing, and this is the video that I wish I had seen before I spent $5,000 on climbing gear. But I've easily spent at least that, and probably closer to $8,000 in all. Climbing gear is expensive, sure, but it will take you places that you could have only previously dreamed of. I mean, not bad. And once you buy it, climbing outside's free. While much of the gear I have has been useful, I've probably spent $300 on things that I've never even touched. And if you watch this full video, I'd be willing to bet I could save each and every one of you 50 bucks just by simply not buying something that you think you might need. And all of these recommendations I've learned over my 10 years of climbing and thousands of routes climbed. And I wasn't alone. I got some great insight from 2 other climbers who have been climbing just as long as I have. And to start off, you certainly don't need all of the climbing gear on the market, and you don't need good climbing gear. You need the right climbing gear for the type of climbing that you want to do. Think of acquiring climbing gear like building out a toolbox. You're not going to go to the hardware store and buy everything you possibly can and throw it in the toolbox. You think about the project you have at home, you buy the tools to do that. You can think about this in terms of 4 tiers. You have gym climbing, then you have outdoor sport climbing, you have single pitch trad climbing, and then finally multi-pitch trad climbing. We're going to start at the bottom and keep building as we go up. And for each tier, we're going to show you the nice to haves versus the need to haves. First up, gym climbing. The 5 things that you really need to start climbing in the gym are shoes, harness, belay device, chalk bag, and chalk. Climbing shoes come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. Some of them are more neutral, whereas others can be a little bit more downturned or even more aggressively downturned. As a beginner, you definitely want a more neutral shoe. It's very common to size your climbing shoes down a full size from your street shoe size, and sometimes even more. Think about buying something that's comfortable, that you can wear, however, it's not so big that your toe is bending back in the end of it, such as Mythos, Tarantulaces, and Scarpa Origins. Those are all at an entry-level price point, right around $100. No matter the climbing shoes you buy, you have to try them on before you buy them. I would just buy a pair of shoes that fits and feels right. You're gonna blow them out pretty quickly no matter what. However, if you're serious about climbing, hold off until we talk about it in the next section. Harnesses are a lot like shoes. You wanna try them on before you buy them. 2 great harnesses that'll last you for years are the Black Diamond Momentum and the Mammut Ophir. They both check in at under $100, and they'll support you no matter where you're at on your climbing journey. Next up, belay devices. The 2 main types of belay devices are what's called a tube device, so an ATC or a Petzl Reverso, and a gree-gree. 20 years ago, this is what everyone would recommend starting with, and I still think it's a good idea to start with this, not just because it's significantly more affordable, but it actually teaches you good belaying habits. This is what we call an auto-blocking device. However, starting out on a gree-gree can help you develop bad belay habits that'll piss off your partners later. One note is that some gyms require you to belay with a gree-gree, so take that into consideration as well. No matter which device you choose, make sure you take the time to learn how to use it properly. A non-negotiable for me, no matter what belay device I'm using, is an auto-locking beaner. This one is the Petzl SMD Triact. I love it. It fits in my hand perfectly, clips in, and there's no chance of this device coming off. Same with the ATC. There are also screw gate lockers such as these, and this is what I started with. However, when I'm 500 feet up and I look down at my partner, I feel a lot more comfortable when I see them with one of these versus one of these. Another thing you'll see every single climber with is a chalk bag. They come in all shapes and sizes as well. The main decision you have to make is, do you want something standard and normal, or do you want something a little fancier? If you want something fancier, good luck. There's a million companies to choose from. This static climbing one is very cool. If you want something normal, I recommend this Prana bag. I think it's the 2nd or 3rd one I've had. They last for years. They're not much of a statement piece, but they certainly get the job done. In terms of the chalk that goes in your bag, I'm a huge fan of buying the cheapest chalk that money can buy, which is Frank Endo. You can buy a multi-pack, I think it's $12 for 9 bricks. There is certainly Friction Labs, and I think that costs the same amount for a fifth of the chalk. So unless you're a professional climber, save yourself some money. Buy the bricks of chalk, crush them up, put them in your bag, and be done with it. Depending on the gym and depending on your goals, you might want to also buy a rope. I think a standard gym rope is about 45 meters long, but talk to the person at the front desk of your climbing gym and ask them what size they recommend. So that's everything you need to go climbing in the gym. And if you want to go outside, you just got to have a friend who has a couple more pieces of gear that we're going to cover in the next section. However, my first time outside, I only owned a pair of shoes. I borrowed everything else from my friends, and it worked great. Next up, sport climbing. Sport climbing is clipping QuickDraws through pre-placed protection on the wall, bolts, and then clipping a rope into those. To go outdoor sport climbing, there's really only 3 new things that you need. However, we're gonna double down on shoes real quick. Once you decide it's time to go outside climbing, it's worth taking an hour to figure out what feels right for your foot. Go to a gear shop and try on at least 5 to 10 different sizes and types of shoes. If you wanna get more aggressive, both in the shape of the shoe and the price point, that gets you more towards the Squamas or the Katanas. And I say that you should go to a gear shop to try them on because after trying on 8 different pairs, I ended up wearing the women's Katanas. I would recommend them. They rock. However, as a trad climbing shoe, I mean, nothing beats the TC Pro. With all these shoes, you're going to pay for the performance. Expect $200 or more for each pair of shoes. So pretty serious. When I started climbing, I had the wrong shoes. They were horribly uncomfortable and they were too big. Learn from me. As far as ropes go, I'm gonna give you some general ideas of what you should look for. You want something in the 9.5 to 9.8 range as you start. I would recommend buying at least a 70-meter rope. A good rule of thumb with ropes is to stick with either rope brands such as Edelrid or Beal or Mammut, because Mammut just makes nice ropes. My favorite is the Tommy Caldwell 9.6 Eco Dry. It's a little stiff, but they last forever. I climb single pitch with them, I climb big walls with them, I go multi-pitching with them, and they really instill a lot of confidence when you're up there trying hard a little ways above your last piece of protection. The first couple ropes I had were the Mammut Crag Classic, and they're great ropes too. And I think they're a bit more affordable. I would stay away from the big gear brands here. They don't focus on ropes as much, and I think it shows in both the price point and in the quality. In terms of rope length, minimum 70. A 70-meter rope is going to be good for almost every climbing area you go to. However, if you want a little bit of insurance, go 80-meter. And what's great about an 80-meter is usually the last 5 meters of the rope is what gets worn down the quickest. So a lot of times what we do is get an 80-meter, and then the last 5 meters of both sides we chop off, and now we've got a 70-meter. If you start with a 60-meter, you can't do that. Unless there's a huge difference in price point, I would always get either a dry or a double dry treated rope. They tend to repel water a lot more and dust a lot better, so they last quite a bit longer. Next up, QuickDraws. There's a ton of different varieties of QuickDraws. However, I think of them in 2 main groups. The one group is a little bit burlier and bigger, and the other group is more lightweight. I pretty much always go with the bigger and burlier. The 2 burly draws I like the most are the BDs and the Petzl Gin. What's great about both of them is you can see the top gates are different than the bottom gates. Both bottom gates make it easy to clip the rope in. I haven't tried them out yet, but I've heard that the new Petzl Spirits rock and are a perfect blend of the 2 different types. So before you head out sport climbing, you want to make sure that between you and your partner, you have at least 12 QuickDraws. They come in packs of 6, they're called quick packs. So I would recommend buying at least 1, maybe 2. One other thing, if you're serious about rock climbing and being safe while rock climbing, that you're gonna want is a PAS, or a personal anchor system. The 2 main types are the adjustable type or the standard daisy chain variety. Either one will suffice. If you're really serious about it and you wanna go multi-pitch climbing and maybe even big walling, I would go with the adjustable variety. Petzl makes a great one. You can definitely get the daisies, and I obviously got a pair for myself. After I climbed about 10 multi-pitches, I decided that I didn't like these as much. I wanted something a little cleaner and an adjustable one. I've obviously changed the cord because I like thinner cord. However, recently they've adjusted the cord size that they provide, and it'll totally suit what you need. And with those, you're gonna need some more locking beaners. I think screw gates are fine for this. So that's all you need. A couple of nice to haves would be a crag pack. I just used my current backpacking bag for the first 3 years. That worked fine. One thing that's nice to have here, but becomes mandatory in the next level, is an anchor. Generally about 20 feet long of 7mm cord tied into a big loop. Watch an anchor building video before doing anything with that. With a couple more lockers. Screw gates again are fine here. This little Metolius one is fine, or I really like the Gravel Plume. They're super lightweight and really durable. One thing that I'll say is also maybe a nice to have for this section, but definitely mandatory for the next, is a helmet. Helmets come in two main varieties. This type of helmet, which is more of a padded helmet versus a hard shell helmet. I would go with one of these. I like the Black Diamond Vaporlight. The only watch out is airport security doesn't care about your nice new helmet. If you give them a chance, they will bash your new helmet. It's obviously happened to me before. It is a little bit on the pricier side, so if you want something cheaper, you could get the hard shell helmets. I believe Petzl makes the best one of those. One thing that can be really nice, especially when you have a brand new rope, is a rope bag. What I always used before this was given to me was a $5 bag that you could get from IKEA. If you want to get fancy, Metolius makes a great rope bag. And you really do want something to protect your $300 rope from the elements. One very much nice to have are Belay glasses. I just got them a couple years ago, I think 8 years into climbing. And the only reason I got them is because I found them online for 20 bucks. We had to do a little bit of a location change due to a lighting malfunction at the Verdon Gorge. However, I think we've got it figured out now. Yep, looks good here at Saint Victoire. Next up, trad climbing. This is where things get really adventurous. This is where you take your own pieces of protection and place them in cracks and fissures formed by Mother Nature. The gadgets and gizmos can get a little intimidating if you're not familiar with them. First off, follow your climbing goals and your budget, because with these gadgets, you can rack up a huge bill at the gear shop. Just this is easily worth over $1,000. We're gonna talk about 5 new pieces of gear that you're gonna need to add to your collection, and we're gonna double down on 2 things we already discussed in the last section. The 5 new pieces of gear you're gonna need to buy for trad climbing are cams, Alpine Draws, nuts, a nut tool, and, like we already talked about previously, a helmet. Let's start with the MVPs. Cams are by far the most expensive piece of climbing gear you will buy. However, they're also the most useful if you want to go trad climbing. In trad climbing, we refer to your collection of cams and other gear as your rack. As you start out with your trad climbing journey, you're going to want to start with what's called a single rack. That's somewhere between 5 and 7 cams that are the most used in trad climbing. The smallest is generally a 0.3, then it goes up in sizes from 0.4, 0.5 to 0.75, topping out with 1, 2, and finally 3. Some great cam brands that won't totally break the budget: BDC Force, Wild Country Friends, Metolius Mastercam. One thing that does separate Wild Country is that they have these extendable slings. So you can unclip and extend your piece. 2 of the other most popular cams on the market are BD Ultralights, which are great, but I would stay away from them at the beginning because they wear out in the trigger wires. Another cam brand which has taken the climbing community by storm is Totems. And for good reason, they fit in certain tricky places that no other cams fit. A great way to start building out your trad climbing rack is to go online and look for deals. Generally, you can get a deal when you buy them in a group. One thing that's slightly unfortunate is carabiners are sold separately. So when you buy cams, they come like this. You will have to buy your own carabiners, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend coordinating them with the colors of your cams. Purple, red, green, yellow, gray. There's nothing worse than being in the crux, getting ready to place a green cam, pulling it out only to realize it's gray. So as far as carabiners go, I still love the Camp Nano 22s. That's what I always use. BD makes some very nice ones as well. You just want them to feel decent and not be overly bulky. Number 2, Alpine Draws. As you can see by all the different colors and varieties we have, Alpine Draws are truly a choose your own adventure. The setup I've come to love for Alpine Draws is 2 Camp Nano carabiners attached to a Mammut shoulder sling. They are incredibly light, and they're also big enough where they don't flip around in my hand. And I like the red because it's a less common color, and it makes it easier at the end of the day when you're trying to sort your gear versus your friends. As a single pitch trad climber, 2 to 4 Alpine Draws is probably sufficient, assuming you have a couple of other QuickDraws available. Here's a pro tip: no matter what gear you buy, always mark your gear once you buy it. On shoulder slings, the easiest thing to do is to mark a tag or something that's not part of the actual equipment. On carabiners, nail polish is a very common thing. However, I have seen people who take a knife or a Dremel and mark their initial on every piece of gear they have. So we talked about the most expensive piece of climbing protection. Now let's talk about arguably the most affordable: nuts. As you can see, I got a lot of them. And they come also in all shapes, sizes, and colors. As far as nuts, I would recommend a selection of about 5 or 6 of the most useful nuts for the type of climbing that you want to do. If you're climbing granite cracks in a place like Yosemite or Squamish, what you're going to want is the DMM offset nuts. Again, buy the pack, you'll save some money, they're very useful. I do doubt that you'll use this one very often. Do not buy a pack of even-sided nuts if you're climbing on granite. They are not useful. Learn from me. I bought a pack of 6 of them and I've hardly used them. However, if you're climbing sandstone, there's a chance you want even-sided nuts. If there's one thing you take from this video, when you buy all of these, make sure you buy one of these, a nut tool. They're very useful for getting nuts out of cracks and also cams. You can use them to grab the triggers or to wiggle a stuck lobe or two. This can and will save you money here. Do not go trad climbing without a nut tool. And you only need one between you and your friend. Whoever's the follower of the pitch will have the nut tool. Now is absolutely the time to buy a helmet. You don't want your friends above you with all of this metal without something to protect your head. And that's not even to mention that they're placing this gear in cracks where rocks could come out. If you haven't already, now's the time to buy your anchor kit. Generally 20 feet of webbing, 7mm thick, and 2 locking carabiners. There's some nice small ones made by both Gravel and Metolius. And just as a quick note, everything I recommend in this video will be linked in the description below. And if you're enjoying this, now's the perfect time to hit that like and subscribe button. And once you've bought these things, you're ready to go trad climbing. One thing that's definitely nice to have as you get more into trad climbing is a double rack. Essentially 2 of each of the most commonly used cam sizes. And once you spend money on cams, just like your rope, take care of them. And if they get sticky like this, clean them and buy some Metolius cam lube so they look like this. However, if you're climbing single pitch and likely 5'10" or under, you're probably okay with a single rack, but it'd be nice to have at least a couple extras in the 0.5 to number 1 size. Next up, multi-pitch climbing. Have you ever looked at a mountain and said, damn, I really want to climb that? Well, this is the section for you. In this video, when we talk about multi-pitch climbing, we're talking about trad climbing, but instead of it just being one pitch, multiple pitches. Anywhere from 2 to 30, why not? And guess what? We're still placing our own protection. Now that we're getting into multi-pitch climbing, you could buy a ton of different gear. However, we're gonna focus on a couple of things that'll actually make the difference. At this point, you're definitely gonna want at least 6 Alpine Draws. They're very useful when multi-pitch climbing so you can extend your pieces and reduce rope drag. Another thing you'll need for your multi-pitch journey is a headlamp. I highly recommend buying a rechargeable one so you waste less money on batteries and less batteries go into the landfill. Anytime you're going up a multi-pitch climb, you're gonna generally want a double rack of cams, a selection of nuts, and of course, a nut tool. And where previously we started with sizes 0.3 or 0.4, you're probably gonna wanna get at least 1.2. And if you're gonna buy them, you might as well buy a black totem. They're the best small cam you can buy. Another piece of gear that you'll probably want is a small pack for the follower to carry on your multi-pitch adventures. A perfect one is the Patagonia 16 liter. I've had mine for 8 years, it rocks. One thing you definitely need for your multi-pitch kit is a backup belay device. If there's 2 of you going up the mountain, you need 3 devices because in case someone drops one, you want to make sure you at least have 2 devices to get down the mountain. I would highly recommend an ATC as a backup because it's super lightweight. However, again, you need to make sure you know how to use this. I would recommend taking it, clipping it to a small locking carabiner and burying it in your pack. And if you're gonna have an ATC, you might as well have a Prusik as well. Another thing you'll want if you haven't bought one already is a true personal anchor system. I really like the Petzl Evolve Dual Adjust. However, the simple Petzl Adjust will do just fine. So now that we've talked through multi-pitch climbing, let's go through some additional nice to haves. First on the list is a GPS watch, and you might as well go with the best, Coros. I've been wearing them climbing for years, and they are rock solid. From tracking speed records to my exertion levels throughout the week, there's no better watch on the market. And the newest climbing version has awesome mapping features to help you find your climb. My favorite aspect is that it tracks my training load, so I know how big I can go tomorrow. As you get towards more specific climbs, you're eventually going to need to buy smaller or bigger cams to support those adventures. Approach shoes. Your running shoes or hiking boots will last for a decent amount of time. However, eventually you're going to get tired of wearing out your running shoes or carrying your heavy ass hiking boots up climbs. A sun shirt. Nice to not get burnt when you're out climbing all day. Then you can have the neck protection. A tiny pocket knife can be nice to have in the bottom of the bag as well. For whatever reason, you might need to cut your rope. One other really nice piece of gear is a Houdini. A lot of different brands make them. This one's by Patagonia. I know Rab makes one as well, but they're a very light jacket that packs down small and fights the wind. When it comes to ropes for multi-pitch climbing, the two that we already mentioned will totally suffice. However, if you want something a little thinner and lighter, you could look at the Beal Joker Unicorn 9-1. It's definitely a bit thinner and wears out quite a bit quicker, and for that reason I've only bought one of those, where I've bought 5 of the Edelrid Tommy Caldwells. It also might be high time to fork up the money for some TC Pros. They are expensive, but they're very comfy and they perform really well all day. Another piece of gear you might want right about now is a thicker padded harness. My favorite brand of harness is Misty Mountain. They make a bunch of different sizes. The Cadillac is incredibly comfortable. The Sonic is great as well. And further down the list of nice to haves, now's probably the time to start adding some micro cams, meaning very small, or offset cams. Just buy what you need for your next climb. And for the advanced multi-pitch climbers out there, one of the next things on your list is going to be a micro traction. They are expensive, but they are a very useful tool. 1 or 2 micro tractions can be very nice to help make simul climbing a little bit safer, or they can be used in tandem as part of a much more advanced fix and follow technique, which we'll cover in a different video. And that's it for our gear video. Pretty simple, huh? If there's anything that you like that we didn't mention, make sure to let us know in the comments. And if you want to talk about your climbing gear or your goals, click the link in the description and sign up for one of our one-on-one coaching calls. I'm absolutely psyched to help you along your climbing journey. And make sure you're subscribed. This is just the beginning of a series of videos we're going to make about gear and climbing tactics that are going to help take your climbing to the next level.